Recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike Rogers, for your visionary leadership. And indeed, each witness, thank you for your service to America. And in particular, Mr. Secretary, your service is so appreciated, and I'm especially grateful as the son of a flying tiger who helped liberate China, as the father of 4 sons who have served in Iraq, Egypt, Italy, and Afghanistan, and as a 31-year Army veteran myself. Your leadership for peace through strength is crucial, and I believe we're in a Cold War we did not choose of dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. It began with war criminal Putin invading Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and then Iranian puppets invading Israel on October 7, 2023, with the Chinese Communist Party threatening Taiwan. President Trump tried to deter war criminal Putin in his first term with Javelin missiles to Ukraine, American troops in Poland, and stopping Nord Stream 2. But
Ukraine is only one piece of his larger plan. His continued military presence in Transnistria, a breakaway region of Moldova, is evidence that he wants to keep pressure on neighboring countries. He has also manipulated elections in Belarus and interfered in Georgia, where Russian forces remain since the invasion of 2008. Now, with threats against the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, he is directly challenging NATO itself. Each of these moves points to a calculated effort to destabilize Eastern Europe, rebuild Russian influence, and intimidate democratic governments into submission. The brutality of his tactics is part of what makes this situation so dire.
But Putin ignored Trump, and defying Biden has continued his efforts. Upon election of Trump, there were hopes for peace, but Putin insulted Trump with the murderous attacks at Christmas and New Year's. Every time President Trump tries to reduce the conflict, war criminal Putin increases mass murder of drones and missile attacks on the people and civilians of Ukraine, including hospitals this week. War criminal Putin is clearly fixated to resurrect the failed Soviet Union, with troops still in Transnistria of Moldova, rigging elections in Belarus, invading the Republic of Georgia, and rigging elections against the legitimate President Salome Zurishvili of Georgia. Additionally, there have been new threats this week against the Baltic republics, our NATO allies. Every outreach by Trump has been mocked by Putin. With that in mind, an incredible achievement of President Trump is to awaken our NATO allies, now including Sweden and Finland, that with Germany pledging now 5% remarkably, and 17 of our allies now provide a larger GDP support for the people of Ukraine than the United States because of President Trump's encouragement. What is the latest status on encouraging our NATO allies of providing for peace through strength?
Thank you for the question, sir. The one thing I would take issue with is the characterization that Vladimir Putin ignored President Trump. I think Vladimir Putin paid a lot of attention to President Trump in his first term, and that's why the invasion did not happen under President Trump's watch. Instead, under the weakness and perceived weakness of Joe Biden.
Ignored and proceeded to
He paid attention under President Trump, and then when Joe Biden was in the office.
It really set the stage, sadly, that if he had really appreciated what President Trump was trying to do, he wouldn't have invaded again, but whether Biden's president or not.
One of the most significant outcomes of this pressure was the decision of Sweden and Finland to join NATO. Both nations had maintained military neutrality for decades, carefully balancing their security concerns against the risks of provoking Russia. Yet, after Putin's invasion of Ukraine, their calculus shifted, and Trump's encouragement of NATO unity gave them a clear path forward. Their decision to join the alliance marked a historic expansion of NATO's influence in Northern Europe, and signaled to Moscow that aggression would not weaken the alliance, but instead strengthen it. This move has not only bolstered security in the region, but also provided NATO with greater strategic depth, as both Sweden and Finland possess modern militaries and geographic advantages that are critical in countering Russian threats in the Baltic and Arctic regions.
But to your question about Europe,
yes,
President Trump has invigorated a truly historic investment amongst NATO allies to shoulder the burden of the defense of the continent of Europe. Vladimir Putin saw what he believed to be weakness, and I believe President Trump has stood up to that by reminding our allies that they need to spend on their own defense and ensure that they're able to shoulder the burden to defend the continent. That's been a good development.
And indeed, I was grateful last February coming back from the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe and meeting with the president, and I told him how exciting it was to see our allies understand that indeed he supports Ukraine, he supports NATO and peace through strength. And General Kane, I particularly appreciate your VMI credentials of professionalism, and with that in mind, we understand that even today, the International Atomic Energy Agency has declared Iran in breach of non-proliferation agreements, and what are we doing to deter the aggression coming from Iran?
Iran has long supported groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and other militias across Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. These groups serve as Iran's tools for extending influence and creating chaos, striking at its enemies while giving Tehran plausible deniability. If Iran acquires nuclear capabilities, its confidence in backing these groups will only grow, as it will believe that the fear of nuclear retaliation will prevent direct confrontation from the West. The result would be an even more volatile region where Iran feels emboldened to spread its power unchecked. This is why the IAEA's findings are so alarming, not simply because of the nuclear program itself, but because of what it would mean for Iran's broader ambitions. Another major concern is how Iran's actions undermine the credibility of international agreements. The Non-Proliferation Treaty and other nuclear accords depend on compliance and trust.
Well, sir, first I noticed in your bio that you went to that other school in Lexington, which is always hard for me to get my head around, sir.
Hey, I grew up in the holy city of Charleston. When I saw Vimis, I thought they were Citadel cadets.
Yes, sir. I'm now a joint guy, so I'll keep all those comments to myself, sir.
You're here.
You know, sir, throughout the IAEA report is certainly troubling. The international community seems to be thinking about what they're going to do about it, and as are we watching this situation develop and carefully monitoring the report.
Gentleman's time's expired.
America's in good hands with
Gentleman
your
from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.